good evening, everyone. See, I flew in from Atlanta today afternoon. It's really great. You can't beat the weather, so I'm not surprised that the show is here with all the good intent. What a great story. It's a perfect segue in many ways. The things that are happening in Southeast, this is just one data point. And I think I'm going to share some of my thoughts. I really thank Tampa Bay to give this opportunity. Since Prashant and Alok, they did request me, that share something about Atlanta. Maybe I can. We spent about an hour before in the hotel talking about how we have evolved over a period of time in Atlanta. And I'm sure we're going to spend some more time after this event. And clearly, we see this as a collaborative network. And just for the benefit of our membership and the audience today, if I may quickly share with you, like a teaser, Atlanta has evolved. I've been a charter member for about 11 years now. I think the organization started in '98 in Atlanta. We have about 600 members, close to 100 charter members now. And the way we, if I may share key points about how we have evolved, and that may be relevant, I think. Over a period of time, the entrepreneurial community has become one. From technology, it has become across the business and all functions. When it started out in the 90s, it was software. But as we all know, innovation happens across the board in any business. So innovation happens in the model itself, in finance, in operations, manufacturing, industry verticals. So over a period of time, the way we have evolved is the participative nature of entrepreneurial community has become a lot more industry independent. Second thing that has happened is the original complexion of time, which was a lot more Indian American or Indian origin, has become mainstream. Today, in Atlanta and Tampa Bay is a great example today. It's a very diverse mix of people, which I think is a great story. Because come to think of it, entrepreneurship, number one, is universal. And number two, I also sincerely believe it is age independent. And this goes back to over a period of about 10, 11 years. About 6 months back, I just wrapped up my fourth venture. The first one was a cross-border mergers and acquisition company. We did set up 3 facilities, one out of Caribbean to do cross-border mergers and acquisitions for Latin America and Caribbean region. Another out of South Asia, based out of Bangalore, to focus on the activity there. And the third one out of Shanghai, to focus on China and Asia Pacific. And after about a year, that company got basically merged with another investment fund because they needed that kind of a network. The second company was a healthcare services company. And this was a bunch of very leading orthopedic surgeons who had their clinics and who were building a software in workers' comp, its integration and automation. And they were struggling for quite some time, almost 5 years. Had spent a bunch of money. And then one of them kind of got to know me a little better through Ty. And then he said, Suresh, why don't you help us? So I jumped into it, took a stake, invested a little bit, and we turned it around, which was more of a turnaround rather than a new venture. I think I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about healthcare too. My roots were in aerospace because way back, much part of 1980s was in England, working with British Aerospace and Rolls-Royce at that time on the Harriers program. And then that's what brought me to USA almost 23 years back. Worked on NASA with NASA Langley. And that was in the next generation commercial airline program. So I didn't know anything about healthcare. But as I think Ashok was pointing out, the fundamentals of business, regardless of which domain we talk about, are really same. Because business happens with people, business happens with customers, and then if you keep your head above your shoulder and run the business the way you would handle your own money and your own customers, I think things generally by and large go okay. But they're never linear. And that's where I believe entrepreneurs differ in their DNA. So the way we went about over a period of time laying out the charter of Atlanta was, we said, look, I think it's important for us to foster entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship is age independent, it is universal in nature. So what do we do? So we looked at the whole spectrum of events, and we learned a lot from it, and we sought help. And likewise, I would say this is just an event, but the doors to Atlanta chapter are always open. Please go ahead and feel free to contact through Kunal or Bruce or anybody, or me directly. I sit on the board of directors at this point, but we do have a very, very supportive committee. So we looked at 5 pillars, life cycle of entrepreneurship. We said, look, the young entrepreneurs. So we have a program for high school kids. Because I think the entrepreneurial DNA, it's better to identify that you have that spirit and the DNA or not. Do you have the ability to take so many body blows, go through this roller coaster ride, right? And because everything looks linear from a distance, but it's never linear, right? I mean, all those who are in this world, they would know it, because there are like 5 peaks in a day and then there are 3 lows. So you got to be able to live through that. So it's better to talk to the kids and tell them that, look, it's easy to see that you can drop out of high school and somebody made $1 billion, but I don't want you to drop out of high school unless you know for sure that you got the DNA. So that's one program. And what we have is, we have 3 or 4 charter members who are so passionate. They come and give talks, they encourage them, and we hope that someday some really good value creators will be born. As you grow, you need a framework, understanding of the framework, and understanding of what is the ecosystem to grow fast. Because I think one thing we did, if you notice, the timing is right. In a somewhat implicit way, Ashok alluded to it, find a niche. Well, what's the market need? Is the timing right? Well, the timing is not right forever. This is a short window. So you got to accelerate and make sure that you deliver it within that time. So the next pillar we have is TIEX. So we pick up people who have just started their new ventures, young, old, doesn't matter, any gender, from anywhere. And what we do is we make them go through this kind of a boot camp, wherein like on 12 Mondays, we offer them kind of connectivity to one relevant charter member. So when you have a startup, you share what you're doing, and you have a charter member who can help you, hopefully, and then accelerate your growth. So that's acceleration. It's like incubator accelerator, very much like one. The third pillar we have is, if you are a growing company, early growth, then what we offer you is, you need, because entrepreneurs are good, they're very passionate, very hardworking, and they're generally very smart people. But that's a double-edged sword. Because when you believe that you are the best, you also tend to listen less to others. Right? So this is exactly the time when you need to change the game in your company and bring in some outside help to help you out, bounce your ideas, and then kind of grow. So we offer a service, almost like a pro bono, that look, if you're a growth company, what is a good time to bring a right board of advisors, right board of directors, and some of the charter members and then others, we offer them that service. So we've been mentoring, as Bruce pointed out, I think This year our target was 40 companies. I think we're mentoring right now 50 companies. So that's the kind of the range of activities for mature early growth companies. Then comes the fourth pillar, what we call as E2E. I think it's sometimes it's, if you are lucky, if you left John Deere and found John Deere as the first customer, but many times people have good ideas, good applications, and they're looking for it. Where is the customer? So what we have is an initiative which connects entrepreneurs to enterprises. There is Home Depot, there's so many large corporations in the Southeast. What we try to do is, and these companies are looking for solutions, and it's quite possible that the solution may be sitting in this room with somebody. So what we do is we connect E2E. So we've set up an innovation lab where we kind of, like there are sofas lying around, you can come and talk, and then we host kind of very informal lunches where the managers or senior VPs of the corporations come. So we let them mix around. And now we are thinking of hosting a little more structured event next week, that is where we can connect the bridge between and entrepreneurs and enterprise, and vice versa. And then the fifth pillar is the social business. Well, there comes a time after we all have a finite life, and we always think that we want to accomplish a few things and then give back. So when you think you want to give back, the concept of social business, we also invited a couple of Nobel Prize winners, like how can we add value to the community, to the local society, and to others. So giving it back in terms of time, cash, or any way you want, or support. So that's the kind of life cycle. I hope, Bruce, I did justice for the benefit of all. But we will share a lot more detail with the leadership team of Tampa Bay, and I'm sure our doors are always open. And this is a message that I convey on behalf of our board, as well as Raj, who is the president-elect. We have a cycle of 2 years, so this is a continuity. We learned the hard way that because initially organizations tend to be person-centric, but they have to learn to evolve to be process-centric to sustain. So that's the kind of our story at this point. I think we are one of the best chapters, but I think there's a lot of work to be done still. Ideally, we should have probably a village where you could come and innovate and grow, and you should have a support from all. So with that, what I would share with you is what I see at the ground. I mean, I authored one book on global sourcing. Not that I'm fond of writing books, I'm not from academia. I don't do after the fact. What I do is, what I did in GE those days was to set up GE's facilities in 17 countries, from early 90s to early 2000. And there was a team of 4 people, was one of those members of the core team that set up the facilities out of Montreal in Mexico, Calgary, Montreal in Canada, Shannon in Ireland, and then we went on and on and on, like Austria, Graz in Austria, Hungary, and over a period of time we realized in the beginning that really speaking, if you have to be in a business, doing global business, human capital is essential for you. So it was very obvious to us way back in '96 that India and China would play a big role in GE's growth. I was with GE. And we wanted to change the game. We were coming out of a recession at the time. So I did that, and that's how, as a byproduct of that, was the first book that happened to go out. Over the period of last 8-9 years, I've been a startup all the time, 4 companies. And right now, if I may share with you, I'm actively working with 3 funds. Because now, the way I look at my future is to invest. Because as a startup, you grow one business at a time. Having grown 4, my personal aspirational goal is to be able to grow many businesses at a time so that you can add more value. And then the way you do that is, I am part of a 2-member team which is focused on a smaller innovation fund. which is focused on $250,000, $500,000 ticket size, investment into disruptive technology. Like Kunal was struggling to share with about the fourth company, Hydrophyte Technologies, basically is water-based clean energy technology. Having spent many years in the energy industry, what we found is that if you can split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen efficiently with modern nanomaterials and other technologies, and you can use hydrogen as a reformer, as a fuel reformer, not as a fuel replacement. And you can use it as a reformer, and that really gives you fuel efficiency and internal combustion. That's where that company is. This year's contracted sales are about $48 million. Next year's is, we have an order pipeline confirmed from fairly reputed customers for about $600 million. Now basically, it gives you about guaranteed 15% fuel efficiency. So that was that company. But the key thing here is that what I found was that investing at innovation is very key. USA has always had, after the World War II, a very extensive network of university research. And there is thousands and thousands of golden nuggets very close to commercialization. IP, lying on the shelves, dormant on some of the professors, in the offices. And I'm fully aware of it because I have been on the board of External Industry Advisory Board of Georgia Tech, Material Science, as well as commercial industry advisor and the venture lab, where we were looking at, because you see, professors find it hard to commercialize. They're very good at inventing. Let them keep inventing. But you need different kind of people to commercialize. So this fund focuses on that. The second fund is more focused on operating businesses, which is like small and medium enterprises, buyouts. And the third one, where I'm a senior advisor out of Federal Bay Capital, New York, is focused on Latin America and emerging markets, where the play is principal investments, project investments of larger nature. It's about $600 million private equity, but that's focused on if you want to build a port or a special economic zone in Ecuador, that kind of thing. Or the coal and iron ore being purchased by the emerging markets like China. So I'm kind of, that's what I enjoy. Long story short, I love growing businesses. I tell my wife, well, I'm retired and I'm going to die like working. So that's how it is. But I enjoy it. So with that in mind, what I observed was this, that truly, I've seen a lot of those anecdotal information and subsequent data that I've found backs up this almost like an undercurrent, a groundswell of Southeast emerging as the next one. And let me share those thoughts with you. I deliberately chose not to give a graphical, like a picture of Southeast here. But clearly, Florida is in the handle of that panhandle. And where that pan goes, we will figure it out. But the Southeast is the future when you look at the huge economic growth engine that is happening right now. And let me share some thoughts with you at this level. And then you would see, I'm sure Ashok would not be there, if that's going to. My style is more conversational, so though I did prepare a few slides, but I'm just going to use that more like a talking point, because I'm not going to read them. So if you stay with me, that'll be good. Really speaking, we're going to talk about cycles of economic growth a little bit, just to put a perspective around it. Then we're going to talk about what is it that makes Southeast different today, with some information there, a little bit of a drill down. And then we'll talk about why this makes a good case for an explosive growth. And at the same time, what's the work that we got to do? What's in it for you? And why this region stands a pretty good chance to emerge as the next, what I call it, Silicon Valley. I mean, I think it would be Silicon Valley in many ways. So that's where we are. And those are some of my thoughts. I don't claim to be a futurist. Let me talk quickly about the social cycle. I think you all know that if you look at the early growth cycles, civilizations have come and gone. And there is enough literature, I don't have to say. Typically, give and take, depending on what book you read, you will see 400-year cycle of the civilization. It takes 100 years to ramp up, another 100 years of peak, another 100 years of plateau, 100 years of decline. That's the kind of history of social cycles that's taken place. You take it from Mesopotamia to any civilization, British Empire, and then probably, you don't know the timeline for the American, it's kind of a civilization that is at its peak. Also remember that there is no exception that a single civilization that reached its peak ever came back to peak. Something to keep in mind. And I'm betting that can happen. A lot of people have said that it will happen. Like the 21st century will be the Asian century. The Indians and the Chinese will come back. And I'm waiting for that to happen. Because in history, it has never happened. But we'll see. But what is happening here is that over a period of time, you come to the Middle Ages, from civilizations, there were a lot more regions that became dominant. Certain economic regions emerged. Don't have to go into history again. I read it a lot. But if you look at nations, concept of nations is relatively new. We forget that. Because only when industrial era arrived, when there's a race for resources, raw material, that's the time when people started grabbing land. And that's how the concept of nations emerged. So it's only 150, 200 years old. These countries didn't exist before. The regions, right? So that's the key thing to it. And now if you look back, now you see, for the last 30, 40 years, again, what you're seeing is a realignment of trade zones. You have the ASEAN, you have the SAARC, you have the NAFTA, you have the CAFTA, right? Because the reason is this. Because people, business, trade, entrepreneurship, innovation, knowledge, they don't see any boundaries. So they will align and evolve the way they would make the best of it. So something to keep it in mind. So that's the reason just to put it in perspective around it, because that's not the core topic and we got time limitations to go through it. However, in the recent regional frontiers within US, everybody knows till 100 years back, the mode of transportation was sea. The raw material from cross Atlantic, can only come by sea. The shortest distance between northern Europe and where the closest distance, great circle distance is between, come through the St. Lawrence River and come to the Great Lakes. So all your industrial cities, Detroit, Cleveland, Erie, Pennsylvania, everything, Chicago, in spite of the cold weather, well, that's where the economic growth happened. And that's how the Northeast grew. And so keep that thought in the back of mind. When by the time information age came, the high-end, high-tech manufacturing shifted. People forget that Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley today because the wealth that was created out of the real brick and mortar businesses was in semiconductor manufacturing and high-tech defense industry. And then once you have wealth, guess what? Where do you deploy it? And where do you live? That
create more wealth.
Right. You live in a place which you like to live. Like a show. He loves that. Tampa. It's a southeast. Right? It's warmer, it's nicer, the weather is good. Why don't you freeze yourself in Chicago? Right? Just think about it. I mean, it was a must for me to live in Chicago when my ships were coming, boatloads of raw material was coming, and steel mills in Gary, Indiana were, packing all this stuff. That's a different thing. You don't need that anymore, right? So that's shifted. And that's how the Silicon Valley came. And remember, it was just a small little valley, and that's where you start deploying. Whether it's good in Silicon Valley, good school systems, everything, so you start deploying cash. But they didn't have the right kind of workforce. So they focused on something that they could do, because you could do what you can do. And that's why the focus was on software, innovation, and that kind of stuff. So that's how this is. I make a bullet point here, proliferation of capital and manufacturing hubs. Let me tell you this thing. It is no more rocket science how to create a Silicon Valley and how to create a special economic zone to do low-cost manufacturing. It is a given. I can tell you the formula, how you can create a hub. It is not really, China adopted low-cost manufacturing. I've been to China many times. I did outsourcing from there for GE days. One of the first outsourcing GE did was in Dalian, China. We did 6-7 times, did a joint venture there. It is no more a secret how you can do low-cost manufacturing. You know the answers. Today is probably not the day to get into that kind of a detail, but I can tell you, I'm right now working on my second book, which is titled The Third American Dream, in which I have a chapter, Creating 1,000 Chinas within US. You can. It's not difficult. And by the way, my roots are in manufacturing and that area, and I can go spreadsheet line by line. I can tell you how the manufacturing cost can be contained. So it's no more a secret. Therefore, it makes sense to think about Southeast as the next frontier for a simple reason. Because if you go back to, I don't know if you've read mega trends from time to time, if you go back to one of the trends that always was indicated in that, which has turned out to be true, is in 80s and 90s, they said, look, there would be a migration or a remigration or a relocation within the country from north to east. Sorry, from north to south. And that's what has happened. If you look at the frontiers of settlers from North Carolina to South Carolina, right? And all the way down. So that has happened. The way I look at it is the Vikings of the next economic booming region are not going to come through the St. Lawrence. They are going to come through the good airports, the good ports. You know, today when you want to fly out, where do you fly out? You fly out from some of your good airports, whether it is Atlanta, Miami, or the nearby. That's how you do. And similarly, when the goods have to come, well, you have Savannah, you have Jacksonville, you have so many ports in the city. So we got the access, we got the future Lawrence River right here. So with that in mind, let me, there you go. So now, do I have some few more minutes? 10 minutes?
No, we are till up to 8:30. Don't worry. You have enough time. That's
All
why
right.
no one leaves.
No.
I'm going to be.
No, I only have 2 more slides. But the slides is not done. I think you are getting the message. But let me put some meat around it. Human resources, natural resources, competitive global manufacturing capacity, critical mass of Fortune 500 enterprises, and the role of next generation policy framework. I'm going to throw some key bullets here to share what I'm saying. Is it making sense or not? And then what is it that we can do to accelerate it further? My personal belief is I see that in next about 4 or 5 years, you would have sufficient capital investments coming in by the people who would have created wealth in this region. And they would love to stay here. Like Atlanta is my home. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to go to Silicon Valley and invest there. You normally invest, remember, closer to your home. It is human nature. I mean, you would invest where you make your money. Or where, the reason is not because you want to watch it. It's just natural affinity. That's how you invest. It's only a different kind of money that gets invested globally. And then today is not the day to talk about it. But clearly, human resources wise. When we moved to, by the way, I did go to University of Florida to do my second graduate degree. So I coming back to Florida is like second home. And I know in those days, Florida did not have a single nationally ranked school. And today, you read Time magazine, you read the rankings, there's so many good schools. What has suddenly changed? Right? Teachers? It is people's migration, people who are successful, people who are stable, people who are professional. Because good parenting, good stable families create the necessity for good schools. Parents participate in schools, they make sure that things change. And that is happening. USF, by the way, honestly, in 1990, I didn't know about USF. And today, it's a beautiful campus. I mean, I've been reading about it, and I've been seeing them graduate to not only NCAA and other programs. I mean, R&D and research has gone up, and we are a nationally ranked university. Things are changing. The human resource, if you look at the total percentage of the pie, today, the schools in Georgia, Georgia Tech, nationally ranked undergrad, top 5. Graduate, their R&D program funding at graduate level is more than MIT, University of Florida, and many other good schools. So you do have and everybody talks about Stanford, Berkeley, and all that. By the way, I've been on the Technology Advisory Board of Berkeley for some time. It's the Silicon Valley always loves to live there because good schools are also next. And the same thing applies to the Golden Panhandle. Competitive labor. We are the only region in the nation who has this advantage. The cost of doing business for me in GE, and I'm talking about this data may be outdated, was $46 an hour. And when we moved our gas turbine power plant to South Carolina in Greenville, the cost of doing business was $18. So think about this, and cost of doing business in Florida is probably even less, even today. So think about it. Where would you, if you're a businessman, where will you take your business to? Where the resources are there and where the competitiveness is. Natural resources, land, water, and energy. We forget that these are not unless you have manganese and iron ore, in fact, that you don't need that. That's a commodity. But land, water, energy is not a commodity. That's an asset. The times have changed. I can buy as much as raw material I need from Latin America. Ship can bring it. I got the ports. Pay for it. Tomorrow I will source it from somebody else. That's not a differentiating. In fact, most of the countries which have a lot more natural resources are probably the poorest countries in the world. So that tells you something, that that's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is a place to live with quality of life is good. So that's important. So land, water, energy. We are over capacity in energy. There is no other region which is over. And then to make things better for us, we don't even have the renewable energy standards right now. That's an opportunity for our policymakers. You can set newer standards. Actually, I was on a panel with Dr. Marilyn Brown. She did win the Energy Policy Nobel along with Al Gore. And I can tell you, in fact, in her view, not my view, she's an expert, very knowledgeable person. She was saying that, Suresh, actually the Southeast can be the role model for the world. Because we have no standards, because only 39 states or so have the RDS standards right now. But we don't have it. We can set standards that are so environmentally compatible to make the life sustainable, which is not there in any other region. And at the same time, we would be a role model for industry and many other things. She has a very comprehensive report. She used to be with TVA, and now she's a professor emeritus at Georgia. So that's there. Largest airports, ports, interregional network. I mean, you name it. Infrastructure is a given. We have it. It's a myth that China has better infrastructure. China's infrastructure only exists on the Pacific coast, seaboard. So you go from Dalian to Beijing to come down to Shanghai, Yangtze River Delta, and then you keep coming down to Guangdong. I mean, Chinese have always done the sea route. Later on they had, remember during the Soviet Union era, the Trans-Siberian Railroad brought all the hardware to Vladivostok. And from Vladivostok, the railroads brought it down. And then, of course, now you build new roads. Therefore, you don't have to stock inventory, you can have just-in-time inventory, cost of manufacturing comes down, and so on. Well, I'm having that advantage today. I can always have low cost of carrying inventory in manufacturing setup. Why do you think heavy and high-tech, heavy industry manufacturing is already migrating? The cars are being manufactured. It's Toyota, BMW, and now Boeing is planning, Airbus industry is planning to set up a plant in Orbiter. You're talking about high-end, high-tech manufacturing. I can tell you some other day, there is a very good case, especially the cost of manufacturing going down with the natural gas finds that we have today. Even if they go down by 10, 11%, your cost of manufacturing becomes competitive with any other country. So the manufacturing is indeed the groundswell, the huge wave that we have. And that's what exactly, if you go around, I mean, I travel a lot because of the very nature of my job, but I can tell you, there is so much more that can be done in the manufacturing. I mean, there is all the cost of differentiation. If we figure it out how to set up special economic zones so that you have the sufficient lower base cost and tax breaks so that because after you're putting a lot of capital in it, and then you have those tax breaks, you're done. I mean, I was sharing with somebody that a few years back, I had set up a shop at Ningbo in China, and for 4 days in the largest retail trade fair, and then in those 4 days, we were approached by 11 different cities in the Yangtze River Delta who told us that if we bring FDI, foreign direct investment, into China, they would give us incentive 1, incentive 2, incentive 3. Next group comes, they will offer 5 other incentives. Next group comes, they will offer some other incentive. They were competing, the cities were competing with each other. They were more capitalist than we were. And then, so in other words, if you figure, because the reason is, in the way that system works is, the mayor of the city typically is measured by the GDP that is created by the city. Higher the GDP, faster you will rise in the ranks of the Communist Party hierarchy. And then therefore, the mayors are driven. So they are competing with each other to drive more GDP. Now, if we could figure it out to create maybe like one special economic zone per county, where you could be creating a mini China within that county. And you could take away all the common denominators of the cost differentiators, because they're the same. So that's the thing. That is what I call as new wave of wealth and job creation. Like Hydrofy Technology, the company that the fourth company that I did, it's a hardware company, it's a product, it's an engineering product. You won't believe, to make small little elbows and nuts and bolts and connectors, the ancillary industry out of use is gone. But guess where did I have to make the dies and etc.? All of them I got it made in Florida. They were the cheapest within USA in Florida. Can you believe that? Finally, what did I do? Instead of getting or outsourcing it, or sending it to Guangdong, what I did was I actually bought a company with full hardware and machine shop and everything. And what a class of workers. I mean, they're so good, so quality-wise competitive. And today, my cost of making that unit is only 10% more if I do it anywhere else. It's not such a huge difference. So that means it can be brought down further if you improve upon. And that's where we see that this is going to happen. And then maybe we have to do a little more work with the policymakers, but we'll do that. And I'm working with the governor's office in Georgia in the same way, that this is the time we have to be doing it. Critical mass, I think it's a given, but what I want to mention here is huge services industry driven by travel, tourism, and healthcare. Not just Florida, we have such a huge coastline. I mean, it's a God-given gift. So we have, and healthcare. Remember, shifting and aging demographics is a competitive advantage. Why? Because the problems you're going to face today, and if you're going to solve those healthcare problems today, would be the technologies and solutions that you can offer to the rest of the world tomorrow. Haven't we done that all the time before? So why not? So think of it this way, that if you are the ones who are solving the unsolved problems first, well, you have an advantage. Because that's where our innovativeness and inventiveness would differentiate us. Last bullet, is role of next generation policy planning. The way I would put it is this way, that when entrepreneurs are typically at the front end of the project, they are the first to face it. And they are typically the charting new paths. Well, if that is the case, then you have a greater responsibility. Sorry, you have. Because you have to take on that additional responsibility after your day work, you volunteer, you come across, and you help others to do it. Why? Because policies and law will always lag the one who's seeing the problem or facing the challenges at the front end of the problem. You are the guys, like today, if you're not finding the right talent, then you should be making noise. You should be shaking up the policymakers and say, hey guys, let's fix it. This is my problem. But if I do this, I'm going to give you so much more tax revenue. And I think it's important that we engage at all levels of policymakers. That's what I say, the opportunity to invent new regional business ecosystems. Because nature of business has always been very collaborative. You may own the company, you may control the company, but you would not succeed unless you're collaborative. So I think that's very important to understand. And similarly, you need to provide the leadership and the glue. And the way I see it is, TIE is one such platform. And you, as its members and you know, the champions, are the glue to make that happen. Because nobody else is going to do it. And nobody else has ever done it for anybody else. You just go into the history, you will see that that's the way. Maybe on that slide, I kind of gave you some meat on the bones. But I think there is a simpler way to remember it. I always try to, because this is one thing which I like, that when you, the reason not that I like to write books, but the reason you sort of have developed the liking for it over a period of time is because it forces you to think. You know, when you put a pen on the paper and say, I asked somebody today over the cocktails, I said, what is the one single biggest strength of Tampa? And I think I forced him to think. Because when you put yourself with a pen and say, you know what, let's write. And now it makes you synthesize and it makes you think. That's why I like. So the way whatever I'm sharing with you is, this is my way of simplifying it and synthesizing it and presenting it in a visual form. This is how I look at life. A nation's GDP is what you make, what you produce, and products and services. And the people who do that, that's what your GDP would be. So your resources, whether it's natural or human, the capability of the resources as to what they can do with it, and the ecosystem that allows you to do that has a direct bearing on the GDP that you have. So from the time you're born, you grow, then you die. That's your life cycle. And when you are born, you're born with your genes, and that's your health. And how healthy can you stay and how much more productive can you stay has a bearing on your GDP. So human capital is an essential enabler for GDP. Likewise, for growth cycle, you need the energy, environment, and water. So so you need energy. And then, just like if you take an uncut diamond from a mine, and if you polish it, its value goes up. Same way I believe education is that polishing. So if human capital needs to be made more worthy, more productive, then you better educate them. So healthcare, energy, environment, and education are fundamental to growing GDP. And if you look at that, our resources and the competitiveness of resources, and I have shared this thought all the time, there is no other country more competitive than US. If somebody says that, I mean, I've traveled to maybe like 60, 70 countries, and not like staying in holidays and hotels and then coming back. No, working, talking to people, being in detailed meetings. I mean, just think of it this way. If you play tennis, for example, and if you win Wimbledon, and if you lose Wimbledon, the number 2 guy still gets 250,000 euros. Does that happen in the USA? If you lose, forget it. Nobody know it. Okay? Super Bowl, such a big trophy. The loser, nobody remembers. Not that that was a bad game. There is nothing like you play to win. You play to win. We are a very, very competitive race. Reason is, all of us have, sooner or later, sooner or earlier, have come to this country with a purpose to make our lives better quality of life. And that's why we are very, very competitive. We got to win. We have to win. And that is true. I mean, the first time I came here, I went to the first football game and I realized that, my God, what a game. I mean, one of the few regrets I have in life is that I can't play. Yeah, because I realized, my God, I wish because I came to this country like at the age of 36. So it was late to play football. But, right? So, but the reason why I loved football was, I mean, and you are on the theater campus and like the town is deserted on a Saturday and everybody like somebody in the Ben Jeffrey Stadium. And the reason was, when I looked at football, I said, what a game. Once I understood it, I went to the library, tried to find a book, didn't find it, asked people, said, oh, it happens. You know, like nobody would tell you what happened. So it took me like 3-4 months to figure it out. But once I understood the game, I think that's the most democratic sport in the world. The reason is, if you are, like, say, a big guy, can't run very well, well, be the center, right? And if you're the guy who is very agile, short, but good muscles, okay, be the wide receiver. Or do this, or do that. Well, you can read the field very well, throw the ball, okay, be the quarterback. But you can't do anything, go play. You tell me which sport gives you a chance to play in a team, regardless of your size, shape, or... I mean, I said, wow, I would have been in this team. I could have done something. I used to play soccer, right? So I said, well, I could have. So I think those are the things which differentiate us. And that's what I call as competitiveness. I mean, within the USA regions, we would be competitive. I mean, I don't want to go into the data today. Highest number of gold medal winners, where are they? From Southeast. The best of the players. Conference is dominating. And, you know, look at the industry-wise competitiveness. I mean, you could go on and on and on. And I think the time has come to recognize that potential. The resources is not an issue. Competitiveness is not an issue. I think there is some work to be done on the policies and business ecosystem side. I agree. And I think that can happen over a period of time. And that is the role our platforms can sort of play by collaborating with each other and by working together with each other. So let me sum it up. You know it. I don't have to preach this. Preaching to the choir. This is, entrepreneurs are the leaders in innovation. They invent new business models, drivers of vibrant policy formulation. Then you have that responsibility. You have to do that. And set new standards for collaboration. Create new wealth and new jobs. Reinvest in value creation. And you become a growth multiplier. I think you have to do all of that. It's just the nature of being an entrepreneur. And I think if we can help in any way, we can work or collaborate in any way, then that would be great. That can be, Tide could be a catalyst. That's true. So, but that's where I feel that golden brand handle is a reality, waiting to happen in a few years' time, provided you get these pieces right. But they're happening. The ground reality is that they are happening. Thank you.